Hey everyone. People are coming in. I'm not gonna turn on my video just yet. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm so excited for tonight's Parsha. Right? Hope I read the right one. That would be really funny. What? What's tonight's one? Does anybody know? Pop quiz. What's tonight's Parsha? What is tonight's Parsha? You tell me. No, you don't tell me. I want someone else who's not in this room to tell me. I know what it is. Okay. All right. Tazria. Okay. All right. Well, hello, Z-Manzilla.
Hello, how's it going?
And hello, Channing. Channing, Hakam Leah and I were talking. Your ears might have been buzzing recently. We were singing your praises and just recently, and spending a lot of time thinking about you and thinking about figuring out a time that we can come maybe get together at some point so we can take a trip out there and have lunch or something.
Oh, okay. Well, that is wonderful. I mean, I could just easily come out to you. You know that.
No, I said, I'm sorry, I said that was for Channing, but that's applies to you as well, Zilla.
I would be
Oh,
honored and love to set up something like that.
Yeah.
okay.
And you too, Z-Man.
Well, much appreciated. Thank you.
Oh,
let's have volume down.
All right. All right. Well, good. All right. Now it looks like everybody is like really filing in. I would like to wait for Aaron, who I know is going to be here. Maybe I'll give him a little poke. Join us. I'm sure he's connecting shortly. The Rabbi Danino, who I've been in contact with a lot, has it over with about a lot of different subjects. He's not going to be here tonight because he is in Israel, I think, for the upcoming Passover holiday. Passover starts on the 22nd. Everyone, so get that matzah. Oh, right, I gotta write that down. Matzah me, baby. Matzah. So funny enough, if I get matzah here at the local QFC or something, they always get something that I don't even know why is produced, but they always carry the not for Passover kosher matzah. So there's matzah that there's particularly stringent rules and regulations about what is kosher during the Passover holiday, and you can find matzah that is just like good for any time except Passover. And that's the kind that they always carry locally at the store for me. So I always think that's kind of funny. I mean, it's like at least they trying it, but it's like trying, but it's like missed it by that much, you know. All right. Well, oh really? A special oven for making matzah? Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I'm yeah. Well, and it's going to be a time for chametz. We sort of transfer a lot of sins and into chametz. This is the time for home, purification of the home. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think. Oh, he says he can't get in. Let's see.
There he is.
Oh,
He just showed up.
just showed up. Okay. Well, yeah. There we go. All right. Connecting the audio.
There we go.
There you go. See, it's all right.
You let me in.
I'm sorry. Make co-hosts. Wow, we're gonna have a big group. So I was just telling everybody, I don't know if this happens to you, Aaron, but Passover's coming up, right? And the local market, they always, for some reason, they try, but they always get not kosher for Passover matzah.
Yeah.
And so
fun.
it's like missed it by that much. But I don't even know why the hell that exists.
Yeah, why does it exist?
Yeah, at all.
Some Christians use it in communion.
Yeah, but why wouldn't they want kosher for Passover matzah? I mean, that's the stuff.
Either way, it's really bad for your digestive tract. Either way.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're able to come tonight. Parsha, I have a lot to say about. So, I got a lot going on.
All right. Well, shall we get started?
Yeah, let's get started.
Right. Okay, everybody, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have this opportunity to learn Torah with everyone who's logged in. How many people do we have now?
A lot. 14.
Nice. All right. So Rabbi Yirmiyahu has invited me to guide the Torah discussion. I think he has a lot to say this week about it. We're going to be discussing Parsha Mitzorah. And for those of you who haven't been here before, the Torah is divided up into weekly portions, and it's read and studied and learned on an annual basis, so on an annual cycle. So at this week of the year, we're always reading and we're learning this portion of the Torah, and as we conclude and finish up the year, we'll have gone through the entire Torah. And one of the principles we ask ourselves when we're learning Torah is, what is the relevance of this portion now? We believe that the Torah was given from God to Moshe before we, as Bnei Israel, entered into Israel. And so it had a relevance then, and we're going to learn about some of the laws that existed at the time that the temple existed. And then we'll ask ourselves, well, that's great for then. And a lot of the Torah is focusing on these laws that were only relevant for the Jewish people when the temple existed. And our mission then is to say, okay, well, how is it relevant now? Because otherwise we're just reading a history book. But if we know and we accept the principle that God gave the Torah, and God is not limited by time or place, and that's a Jewish belief, that God is limitless. So that means that if God gave the Torah to Moshe and the Torah was supposed to be read, then it's supposed to be applicable now, knowing that the temple would not exist. So we're going to find a modern day application to some of these laws here and discuss that. It's a really interesting portion, especially from a medical standpoint. And I think I don't know if Rabbi Yirmiyahu is going to talk about that relevance here, because we're going to be talking about Tzorat. And Tzorat is a skin condition. Some people speculated that tzara'at was leprosy. And we will learn what's very interesting about this whole issue of tzara'at, the symptoms of tzara'at, in subsequent parshas or portions of the Torah. We'll see that tzara'at also could be found on inanimate objects and houses. So houses could suffer from this visual skin type disease. So before we get into it, let's just say a quick bracha, the blessing over learning the Torah, to give us a power up and acknowledge the eternity of this, and to be very grateful that we have the opportunity to be here and to learn. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher barach banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Hashem noten haTorah. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who has given his Torah. Blessed are you, Hashem, giver of the Torah. So let's talk about Metzora. There are a couple of different themes here. One is this whole idea that there is this affliction of tzara'at that exists. And then there's also the notion of purification. And so in previous parsha, we talked about what that meant. We talked about the water that was used to purify someone who was impure, the water that was derived from the red calf. And we can, you want to take it away?
Right away. We're on Tazria, right? Leviticus 12, right? Verse 1.
Oh, Tazria, right. That's the parsha, not Metzora.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
is. But it's still
Okay.
It's dealing with purification. So my
It
mistake.
is. It's still
And my
dealing
mistake,
with.
but it's all about purification. These two parsha are going to be talking about purification.
Yeah, exactly. They're two.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't disregard anything he said. It still applies. Okay.
It still applies.
It's still everything he said was true.
Tazria is the setup for Metzora.
Yes.
So it builds on it.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we're so for those of us who have now, this is okay. So I'm gonna take over a little bit here and say each week, Rav Aaron tells us to ask the question, what does the Torah tell us? What does the Torah tell us? What is the Torah telling us?
Telling us, active voice.
Active voice.
Mm-hmm.
What is it telling us? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what it is telling us. And in the beginning, I'm going to talk about also what it's not telling us, which is very interesting. Okay. It starts off, and this is kind of important why you really want to get the Stone edition of and to follow along, because the translations here are may be different than the ones that you're used to, and the commentary once again is spectacular. So I'm going to just read the first paragraph. It says, Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and say this, tell them this. When a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, she shall be contaminated for a 7-day period, as during the days of her separation of infirmity shall she be contaminated. On the 8th day, the flesh of his being the son's foreskin, shall be circumcised. For 33 days, she being the mother, shall remain in a blood of purity. She may not touch anything sacred, and she may not enter the sanctuary until the completion of her days of purity. If she gives birth to a female, okay, so first is instructions for a male, now it's instructions for a female. If she gives birth to a female, she shall be contaminated for 2 weeks. as during her separation, and for 66 days she shall remain in the blood of purity. And then it goes on to talk about what she's got to do, that for a son or a daughter they're going to bring a sheep for an offering, and da 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 da. Now everyone thinks I'm going to talk about the fact that there's some sort of difference here between the purity, that there's some sort of built-in misogyny about being impure after birth, and they think I'm going to talk about that why is there a difference between a boy and a girl, but I'm not going to do that because we've had a lot of those discussions. Instead, the Torah here is, as Aaron is telling, as Rob Aaron says, he says, what is the Torah telling us? Well, the Torah right here tells us, what do you do with a boy when a boy is born? You're going to do this. I'm not going to quibble about that right now, the details of this. And then it turns around and says, well, what do you do when a girl is born? Okay. And then it gives the formula for whatever you're supposed to do for that. What is the Torah not telling us? That's an interesting question. What's it not telling us? It's not telling us what to do with intersex people. Right? Right? It's divided it into this binary thing of what to do if you have a boy, what to do if you have a girl, but leaves us no guidance if you're puzzled as to what to do if you don't know what you've had. Maybe there's something in between. So, why does the Torah not tell us? Because the Torah is saying by not telling us. Essentially, in other words, like, what does the Torah say about what it's asking us is the question, well, what do you do about things that the Torah doesn't talk about? And the answer to that question is that you seek guidance. That you seek guidance from others. And just as Channing pointed out, this was thought about by the Talmudic rabbis because they noticed that there were other kinds of things that didn't fit the this or the that. So the community had to get together and think about this. And they came up with, they have at least 6, maybe even possibly 7 genders. They have Zakar, right? Nekeva, Androgynos, Tumtum, Ilonit, and Saris. And so Zakar is one of the genders. It is a term, it's derived from the word for a pointy sword and refers to a phallus, and it means a biological male at birth that develops into an adult male. Okay, and then you have Nekeva, Aisha, woman, right? This term is derived from the word for a crevice, a vulva, which means a biological female at birth that develops into an adult woman. And then there's androgynous, and that's a person who is intersex, maybe has both male and female sexual characteristics. And there's actually 149 references in the Mishnah and in the Talmud. Okay. And we might, we would probably today call this intersex, right? So then there was a tumtum, and this is a person whose sexual characteristics are indeterminate but obscured. And they're either male or female in appearance, but true determination is really only made upon surgical exploration. And there's 181 references in the Mishnah and in the Talmud, and 335 in the Midrash and the Shulchan Aruch. And these are people who may have undescended testicles, or like penis at 12 syndrome, or there's a lot of variable syndromes like that. Now, Lonit is a person who identifies as female at birth, but doesn't express secondary sexual characteristics upon completion of puberty. And this is a fascinating one. There's 80 references to the Mishnah and the Talmud, and 40 in the Midrash and the Shulchan Aruch. And this is describing Turner syndrome, which is a genetic condition which Jews have a predisposition towards. And the person looks like a female, but they never blossom and develop the secondary sexual characteristics of a female, of an adult female. And then there's the Ceres, and that's usually a person who identifies as male at birth, but does not develop the typical secondary sexual, characteristics that is associated with an adult male. And this is divided in between a sun castrate, a Ceres Hama, and a congenital one, a Ceres Adam, which occurs through surgical interventions such as castration. And there are all these references, 100 references in the Mishnah and 379 in the Midrash, and in yes, timeout. I know. Yeah. What? Yes. Yes. Yeah. What?
So where does it say this in the Parsha? Like, so how does this? If my job is to reel you in,
yes.
Now, what we're talking about is
I'm coming back. I'm gonna wrap it up.
A woman gives birth to a boy.
Yep.
She's unclean for a period of
Yep.
what is it?
Yep.
7
Yep.
days.
Yep.
Birth to a female.
Yep.
It's 2 weeks. So
what do you do if it's in between?
What do you do if it's in between?
Because that's what I'm saying. What if you do? And that's what the Torah is not telling us. And the reason
Torah
it's
is not telling us this. Yeah.
It's telling us by not telling us.
And what is it telling us by not telling us? It's by not telling us, it's telling us that we need to seek out advice of the community and the advisors and the people around us, and include the person themselves, right? That is my interpretation of what it's telling us. And I'll tell you why that's my interpretation. That is my interpretation because in the Mishnah, in Tostefa Bikurim, chapter 2, verse 6, it explicitly emphasizes that all of these people, all genders are human beings, and transgressions against them are treated in the exact same manner as transgressions against any human being. And so that would be my first point about this particular Parsha, and just today examining in a meta fashion what it's telling us by not telling us. Seek out advice by going to community. And I have, now a lot to say, of course, about the second part, which is the whole leprosy thing. But I want to
Well-
give Rob Aaron a chance to comment.
So I think that's a good a good point, because there's this whole other level of the Torah, and I was learning about this last week. There's the oral Torah that was given in conjunction with the written Torah. So what that means is the written Torah is what's contained in the book that we're reading, and then there's certain knowledge that was passed down orally from Moshe to the elders, and then passed down to the leaders in the community. And so what's the proof for that? So an example of a proof for that is we learn that there are kosher animals. We are not exactly told how ritual slaughter or kosher slaughter is to be done. It's not contained in the Torah, but before the advent of the internet and even books, Jewish communities that were scattered across the globe all agreed that there was one way, a kosher way, to slaughter an animal for ritual slaughter. So how did a Jew from India know or accept that ritual slaughter was the same as a Jew in Germany, and as a Jew in Yemen, and a Jew in Ethiopia, and a Jew in Spain? They all the same way slaughtered animals in the same way. Another example is the Torah itself is written without what are called cantillation marks. Cantillation marks are kind of like music notes to the Torah itself. So when the Torah is read in a service, the cantillation marks apply to the reader who's reading the Torah, and there's a melody in which the Torah is read. Now, the melodies differ from region to region, but everyone agrees that the melody is the same, even though these notes, these cantillation marks, these notes are not written down in the Torah itself. So that's like another proof that there's this oral Torah that's handed down. So an experiment was done whereby someone said that they were going to try and keep the Torah literally without the oral Torah. Now, there's a group of people who claim Jewish identity called the Karaites. The Karaites follow the written Torah only, and they do not accept any oral Torah. And so this Jew who is making this experiment, decided he's going to try and do this experiment and follow the written Torah. And it turns out that when he was trying to follow just the written Torah, he was unable to complete the mitzvot, or unable to perform the mitzvot, without knowing what the oral Torah told us in terms of interpretation. So what Rabbi Yirmiyahu is discussing is he's saying there are these situations that go beyond the text itself, and we know that because there are other writings that address these other genders that have different aspects to them, not just a transgender, but transgender with different aspects, and it breaks it down into subcategories. And there's a reason for that, because these subcategories of folks with different physical attributes exist. And so how do the laws apply to them? So clearly there were rabbis who were discussing this and figuring out how the laws that are specific to gender apply to them. And so I think your discussion is I think it's a lesson in terms of the existence of the oral Torah. And you cited the Mishnah Berurah. There's also citations. I was doing some research earlier today. There's also Mishnah Yavemot, or in the Talmud. There's a discussion about this as well, which actually says, why could Sarah not give birth? Sarah, meaning the wife of Abraham. What was wrong with her that she couldn't give birth? And perhaps she lacked, there was an opinion that she did not have the womb, the female baby-making machine, and that's why she couldn't give birth. And it was a miracle where God then gave her that ability at her old age. I believe it's age of 99. We learn that she was able to give birth. So
Yeah.
Very good point.
There are some Kabbalistic writings that suggests that Dinah, the character Dinah, was ensouled with the soul of a man, and that Abraham's son Isaac was ensouled with the soul of a woman. So, these are and I think in our Jewish mystical traditions actually speak of this term called Gilgul HaNeshamot, which means a cycling of the souls. And this type of reincarnation, in which the soul of one gender enters the body of a different gender. There's even a term for it.
Yeah. So a Gilgul is an incarnation, and if those of you who don't know, Jews believe in reincarnation. So this is so.
Well, they do
is,
now. Well, some
yeah.
of them do now.
I think it's fairly. I think it's fairly acceptable. I think.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about some of the. If we take a step back and we ask ourselves, what is one of the reasons? What is the Torah telling us in terms of the nida, the state of impurity? When a woman gives birth to a girl as opposed to a boy, like why does this even exist? So what's going on here? And those of you who have tuned into some of Rav Yirmiyahu's talks, I'm sure will know some of this. And those of you who have not heard this before, women hold a very high place, high step in Judaism. For instance, women are not bound by time-bound mitzvot. So what does that mean? Women don't have to make prayers the way men have to make prayers on a daily basis at certain times. A woman is exempt from that. Why? Because a woman is on a higher spiritual madrega, a higher spiritual level. Why is she on a higher spiritual level? Well, she has the power to give life. And men do not have the power to give life the same way a woman does. So there's an interpretation here that once a woman gives birth to a boy, she's giving birth to an entity that does not have the spiritual power that a woman has to give birth. Okay, so what's the significance? Why would then giving birth to a girl result in a longer term of impurity, a longer time period of impurity? Because the greater impurity, there's like the capacity for holiness within a woman due to her creative powers, literally her creative powers in giving life, necessitates a longer wait to remove this impurity. So that is one interpretation of why there's a longer period of time, waiting period for impurity versus purity for men or boys versus girls, giving birth to boys versus girls. So it's a recognition of the life-giving, the holiness that women have. Then there's a longer period of impurity because a girl was born. And there's a talk that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave on this parsha, which I think I touched on this concept or this principle months ago. And it is the whole idea of feminine waters and masculine waters.
Oh yeah, well that's an intensely mystical concept, actually.
Right.
And it doesn't really have to, yes, it has to do with, yeah.
So I'm going to try. I'm going to try and see if I can break it down here. One translation of the parsha would be, when a woman who shall seed and give birth to a male child shall be tameh, impure, for a 7-day period. So if you translate it in that way, and because the Torah is, if you look at different Hebrew to English translations, there will be different interpretations. What does this actually mean, that a woman shall seed and give birth? So I'm looking right now. I'm looking back up in Midrash Rabbah. In the name of Rab Simlai, he said, just as man's creation was after that of cattle, beasts, and birds, so too that's not the one I wanted to do. Okay, the Talmud Nida, a woman who shall seed and give birth to a male. If a woman gives seed first, she gives birth to a male. If the man gives seed first, she gives birth to a female.
Yes, right, yes.
Okay,
right,
so what
yes,
does give seed mean?
Yes.
What is the Torah telling us?
Yeah.
So the Torah is encouraging, on one hand, the Torah is encouraging couples, if they want to have a boy, the idea is you got to please your woman first.
Yes.
He gives seed first, and you're more likely to have a boy. Now, I don't know if an in-depth study was ever done of.
No,
of
now
this.
do you know where that comes from? Do you need that whole?
No.
Okay, hold on a second. You keep. All right, I'm gonna go get it.
Okay. So to understand the concept, you have to think of it in terms of the service to God. So we can look at this in terms of literally, we can look at that concept that's described in the Talmud in terms of what the gender of the child is going to be, or we take a step back and we say, okay, what is male, what is female, what are other representations in Judaism? So it's well accepted that Bnei Israel, the Jewish people, are called the woman. We have a feminine quality to us, and God is called the man. And in the Torah, it tells us that on a day in Hosea, it's on that day you shall call me a husband. So there's this adjoining between the male and female. That is, the female would be the people Bnei Israel, and then the man would be the representation of God.
Well, what about the Shekinah? That's the bride.
Oh, hold on. We just roll with this.
All right, I'm going. All right.
So just in the case of a man and a woman, the woman seeds first. She gives birth to a male. So by way of analogy, in the relationship between Bnei Israel and God, when the woman, the community of Israel, seeds first, meaning there is an arousal from below that evokes an arousal from above, rather than the other way around, God giving rise to a spiritual arousal from below, it's what's given birth is a more intense, a male energy of love that exists. And so we can equate this to a spiritual awakening. When God goes ahead and awakens from below, when the male awakens from below, it's not when the male then removes that force, there's a less of a likelihood that it will remain, that dedication to mitzvot, that connection. Whereas when from below, when the soul, when you make your connection with God, it's going to be a stronger bond because you are reaching the heights and you are reaching up to build that connection rather than it coming from below. I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah.
The concept, the feminine waters. So the idea is the arousal from below creates a stronger bond.
All right.
Within the
I'm going to
relationship.
expound on that just a little bit. This was expounded upon in the 14th century by Rabbi Nachmanides, right? And I'll put a link. Maybe Leah, can you put the link to the Folk Magic of Nachmanides in the chat? It's called the Folk Magic of Nachmanides is the name of the. If not, I'll do it.
Is it in the document library or something?
No, it's just in a blog.
Okay.
Okay, and he authored this book called the Igeret HaKodesh, okay, the Holy Letter, which is used by and really quite venerated by, Aaron mentioned, the Lubavitchers, the Rebbe, right? And this book contains information about the importance of spiritual intention while having sex, the effects of directional orientation of sexual activity, meaning like whether or not you'll have a boy or a girl, various sexual positions. And to this day, it's actually used among the Lubavitchers to perform bibliomancy in certain instances in looking for answers to various questions. Yeah. So, ta-da.
All right, very good.
So, should we go on?
Yeah. Let's go on to Sarai. Let's go on.
All right, let's go on to okay. So as Aaron alluded to, as Rabbi Aaron alluded to before, this parsha is mostly about. I mean, that takes a little bit. That's the first little bit, and the rest of the whole show is devoted to this set of skin diseases. And if you read the commentary, I think it's really important, because if your Bible is the King James Version Bible, it probably talks about leprosy. And you need to know this right up front. The very first commentary in the Stone Edition it says, the popular translation of tsaras has been leprosy, and it was commonly accepted that prevention of the disease's spread was the reason for quarantine of a person smitten with the malady. However, Rabbi Hirsch demonstrates at length that these notions are completely erroneous. Tsaras, as Aaron mentioned earlier, is the physical manifestation of a spiritual malaise, okay? It's a spiritual malaise. The primary cause of tsaras is the sin of slander. Similarly, it is a punishment for the sins of bloodshed, false oaths, sexual immorality, pride, robbery, and selfishness. And this is according to Arachin 16a Midrash. Thus, tsaras is a divine retribution for the offender's failure to feel the needs and share the hurt of others. And I assume this is what Miriam is struck with.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
God isolates him from the society so that that person can experience the pain that they have imposed on others and heal themselves through repentance, right? We talked about that, repentance, and the importance of that the last week. We transliterate the Hebrew since there is no accurate translation of either the word tsaras or its subdivisions, right? There were categories of this disease. The forms of tsaras are mentioned all here are the white patches on the skin, okay? And so now it goes into this affliction, but I want to point out that this affliction, I want to talk a little bit more about it from this book, okay? This book is the Encyclopedia of Medicine in the Bible and Talmud, which I love this book. And it has compiled everything that in the Bible and in the Talmud about this particular spiritual / physical disease, okay? And it says here that it probably refers to various forms of leprosy, including Becheret, spotty leprosy, Se'et, nodular leprosy, and Sapachat, vulgar leprosy or psoriasis. And Negas Tzara means afflicted by leprosy. So there's all these other terms. The color, the depth, the location, and the character of these skin lesions and their causes and their diagnosis and treatments are discussed in further detail in Proust. Now, this is a fantastic book, Proust, which is basically, like I would say the biblical, the Bible of medicine, literally. Okay. And they talk about, in this book, all the known things, what type of snake extracts can cure these eruptions, and whether or not there's oil of olives need to be rubbed on women's skin and their hair, and they postulate what could this possibly be, whether or not this represents a vitiligo, and it's all this fascinating, like what kind of regional diseases were going on at that time. There is a tremendous amount of information, yet lack of information. Again, here we are with the Torah. What is it not telling us? There's information and a lack of information. Share my findings with the class afterwards. Okay,
I have a question that I want to pose.
Sure.
So what's the connection between slander and then a skin disease that appears on one's that others can see? Okay, so what's the connection here? What's the connection here?
Are you asking? Well,
I'm throwing this out here.
Why don't we throw it out?
What do you think the connection?
What
do you think the connection
give everybody a little chance.
I mean, I have some ideas, but
yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, let's give everybody some time to put forth a hypothesis. That's a good. Anyone? Bueller?
Give him a moment.
Perhaps it might help if you repeat the question.
Okay, so the question is, one of the it's well accepted that Surratt, this skin condition, which reveals itself externally, people can see it. That's why we have this portion dedicated here on the Kohen. The high priest will then analyze it, make the diagnosis that it is indeed Surratt. But it's accepted that Surratt is a symptom or a consequence of someone speaking lashon hara, speaking with a bad tongue or a bad intention, speaking slander against another person. So what is the connection between improper speech and then the resultant Surratt that one suffers from improper speech?
Okay, I figured that was the case, but I wanted to share personal experience, but I wanted to make sure that it was relevant to what we're talking about.
Sure.
It just so happens when I was a youngin', I had a problem with every once in a while busting out into hives. Doctors had a very hard time determining why this was, and established at some point that I had an allergic reaction to something I ate. What I was not telling doctors at the time is that I want to say doggone near every single time I busted out into hives, I was feeling guilty for having lied to my parents about something.
Wow.
So I have personally experienced a hives-like reaction based on guilt. And so I have no trouble at all believing that there is some real life basis for what it is we're talking about here.
Wow.
Yeah, I can certainly verify instance of that happening in my life for sure. Yeah, 1,000%.
Really?
Oh yeah. You want me to tell you?
Yeah, please share.
Okay. So in 2010, things were not going so well with me and my wife. And at the time, and it turned out that she was having an affair behind my back, about which I was unaware, with, of course, a close friend. And it was a same-sex relationship. And at the time, we were fighting and breaking up. It was very early and traumatic, and I was trying to understand what was going on. And at the same time, my ex-wife began to have a terrible itch down below. And it was hives, and it was urticaria. It was an allergic reaction. And it took her several trips, very embarrassing and difficult trips, to the gynecologist to figure out that she was actually experiencing perivaginal and intravaginal urticaria and hives. And the only there was no physiological reason for that, like an STD or STI or anything like that. It was a guilt reaction. And it manifested as a skin condition. And it affected the place that it struck her, in the place of, yeah, there you go.
So, that's interesting that it manifested itself at the site. And from a legal term, we would call it the lex loci delecti.
I would call it the lex loci delecti anyway.
Yeah. So it's basically the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
But I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, that's
Yeah.
So then slander. So let's now equate that to slander. So slander.
There was a lot of slander going on.
Yeah. Okay. So let's equate that to slander. So slander is something that typically will happen behind someone's back, right? That's the whole point. You don't say it to their face, you say it behind their back.
Mm-hmm.
And then and it can cause a lot of harm. There's a great rabbi, the Chafetz Chaim. I'm going through this daily study with my daughter, and the reason for it is to kind of teach her proper speech. And as we're going through it, what we're learning together, what is the appropriate way to not slander someone. For instance, if I've had a bad experience in business with someone, and then I know that person is now going to go into business with a friend of mine, how do I address my friend and warn my friend not to do business with this person without slandering them? So what is the most delicate way that I can say you shouldn't be going into
the legal profession grapples with that all the time. If a lawyer leaves a practice or a doctor leaves a practice, you can't disparage them in any way. And even just merely saying they've left the practice may constitute an offense that will they will be awarded. So you have to be able to say these things diplomatically, not slanderously, and say, I hope things work out for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what is the best way to say that without crossing that line? And here it seems as if Sarat becomes obvious. So it becomes like a public kind of sign. And if everyone is already accepting that Sarat is a consequence of slander, maybe there's some encouragement. There's a deterrent effect. Right,
like the Scarlet A. Is that what you're saying?
So maybe there's a deterrent effect to not engage in slander, so you too won't have that mark, and everyone recognizes that.
So I am gonna blow your mind and annoy you, just because we have to end. And why? How else can I? We can't have a complete Parsha with me really just driving my cousin crazy with all my wackadoo ideas. So
as long as it's not a lawyer joke, yeah.
No, it's not. No. I actually intended, I really thought that there was actually, I had divided this into the legal definitions and medical definitions, and it turned out, unfortunately, I spent a little bit more time on the medical stuff. But what now I want to introduce and drive you crazy before we leave is the idea that this is what's called, now there's another term for this, when you are reading spots and blemishes on people's face and then characterizing their spiritual purity by marks on their skin. This is a method of divination and face reading called metoscopy, okay, for which Judaism is very famous for, and it has been mentioned. It's mentioned extensively in the Zohar, and it's one of the skills that Isaac Luria and Chaim Vital had. They could look at a person and tell by their facial features whether or not, and their skin, their outward appearance, that their outward appearance was indeed a reflection of the inner person, and that those things did manifest. So I will just leave you with that idea that we are very loosely kind of brushing up against in the Torah right here, the idea that, marks on the skin tell you about the person, and you said it yourself. So
I don't think there's any secret to that. What do? We read people's faces.
Well,
right? When you meet someone,
a lot of people.
Yeah, but come on. Just on a basic level, you meet someone and you read their face. You read the expression on their face.
How is that
different? It's not.
No. How is that different than reading their palm? Right?
Because your palm. Well, you can read a palm because it's not a product of perhaps your lifestyle.
According to the Zohar, it is.
Maybe. I mean, I have calluses right there, right? So you could tell something about me based on my calluses. Perhaps,
absolutely, right? And I can tell. I can tell based on your fingers whether or not you have COPD and lung disease because you have clubbing. I can tell if you have protein deficiencies. I can tell about your lifestyle in lots of different ways, by your fingernails, whether or not you have an obsessive compulsive disorder and you're nervous all the time. I can tell whether or not, right here, you can tell looking at my hand, the back of the palm, that I have an extra hollow here, and I have a slightly deeper than the other hollows, and that's because I have interosseous interosseous atrophy of that muscle because I've had a very, 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 very tiny focal stroke. And that muscle has atrophied because of the stroke that I've had in the spinal cord. So just by looking at my hands, you can tell me you once had back pain and you had to get a spinal fusion, didn't you? Absolutely. These are all manifestations. And I'm just showing you, just kind of stretch it, just kind of put it out. You know, just
I got one for you next week. We'll wait
all right,
until
good.
next week. I got you. I got
Well,
one
we're
for you.
gonna talk
Okay.
about you jump. We're gonna at 6 o'clock. We're gonna jump over to Testament of Solomon time, baby.
Love you guys, everyone. Just a moment for peace everywhere. And all our brothers and sisters across the world should know peace.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Love
Thanks
you
a
all.
lot.
See you next week.
Take care.
Thank you.